Hello, you are welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the previous session. That is Unit 1, Session 1. In the Session 1, we studied Introduction to Cells and also looked at the cell theory. We got to understand the three concepts of the cell theory, and then we ended up with cell fractionation technique. Hope you enjoyed this session also. So you're welcome to Unit 1, Session 2. In this particular Session 2, we will be looking at cell types. So in this session, at the end, it is expected that you should be able to describe an eukaryotic cell structure, also distinguish between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, and identify the groups of organisms that possess eukaryotic cells. Draw and label both plant and animal cells, and then finally to state two examples each of unicellular and multicellular organisms. Now let's look at types of cells. Different kinds of life exist on the earth. So when a cell does not possess an observable nucleus, it is called an eukaryotic cell. An example is the virus. And because the virus is not a living thing, we then say that two main types of cell exist, and these two main cell types are prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Now let's look at prokaryotic cells. The key characteristic of prokaryotic cells is that they do not have membrane surrounding their nuclear material. So their nuclear material does not have any membrane surrounding it, and they also have fewer organelles and are normally smaller in size and also simpler. An example under this kind of cell is the bacteria and blue-green algae, which is also referred to as cyanobacteria. Now let's look at eukaryotic cell, which is the second cell type. For eukaryotic cells, they have their nuclear material enclosed in a double membrane bound structure, referred to as the nucleus. An example of organisms that possess or that have eukaryotic cells are the protists, fungi, animals, and plants. Now, based on classification of living things into 5 kingdoms, with the exception of kingdom prokaryote that have prokaryotic cells, all the remaining 4 kingdoms, that kingdom protoctista, kingdom fungi, plantae, and animalia, all have eukaryotic cells. Now let's look at prokaryotic cells in detail. A single prokaryotic cell consists of a mass of cytoplasm that is surrounded by a cell membrane and a rigid cell wall, but their nuclear material is not membrane bounded, as we've already treated in the previous slide. And so the cell wall is made up of a protein substance we refer to as the peptidoglycan. So their cell wall is made up of protein substance called peptidoglycan. And also, some bacteria possess slimy capsule or flagella, and the function of the capsule is to prevent desiccation, and that of the flagella is for movement. Also found at the center of a prokaryotic cell is the nucleus, and this nucleus is a long strand of DNA coiled into a ring to form a single chromosome. And prokaryotic cells also contains ribosomes, food storage granules, and enzymes in their cytoplasm, but they do not have endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, or mitochondria. And as a result, the mesosome that they possess rather is used as a site for respiration, and this mesosome is formed through an extension of the plasma membrane. And some prokaryotic cell types, such as bacteria, are able to manufacture their own food. This is because they possess small membrane-like chromatophores that contain a pigment bacterial chlorophyll, and this bacterial chlorophyll helps them to synthesize their own food. With regard to their mode of feeding, for some prokaryotic cells, they are able to exhibit saprophytic mode of feeding, and they do so by secreting enzymes onto complex organic substance, and then the enzymes breaks down these complex organic substances to simpler forms, whereby they then absorb the soluble products into their bodies. And then with regard to their reproduction, they exhibit asexual reproduction by binary fission, and by so doing, a single cell is divided into 2 daughter cells. Now let's look at eukaryotic cells. So for eukaryotic cells, they are known to have a membrane surrounding their nuclear material, and they have more organelles as compared to that of prokaryotic cells. And so for eukaryotic cells, they are highly compartmentalized in that each cell is divided by internal membranes into chambers where metabolic activities are carried out. And also, when viewed under a light microscope by staining the cell with some special dye, certain parts of the cell will be viewed under the light microscope. However, other organelles, which are very small in size, example being mitochondria, cannot be seen under the light microscope, but rather the electron microscope. So let's look at figure 2, which gives a representative of eukaryotic cells. So figure 2a is a generalized animal cell, and then of figure 2b is plant cell. So let's look at the animal cell, the generalized animal cell. So for animal cells, they have plasma membrane surrounding the entire cell, and they have the endoplasmic reticulum, the nucleus, the ribosomes, and all various organelles that is required to carry out the various metabolic activities. But with regard to the plant cell has a cell wall, and it also has the nucleus, the mitochondria, and the chloroplast. So one key characteristic with regard to the plant and animal cell, or the differences between them, is that the animal cell do not have a cell wall, but the plant cell has a cell wall. And in addition to the plasma membrane, the animal cells also lack chloroplast. However, the plant cell has a chloroplast, and this chloroplast helps it to manufacture their own food. Now let's take this trial question. I want you to try your hands on it. I want to know if you can state 3 differences between animal and plant cell. Now let's look at unicellular and multicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms are organisms that are made up of only one cell. An example is the euglena and amoeba. So for multicellular organisms, they have numerous cells. So such organisms have numerous cells, and their body is complex in nature. An example is man. And because the body structure of multicellular organisms is complex, the cells are said to be specialized in that different group of cells develop to carry out different functions. So one thing that we have to know about cells is that cells of various organisms comes in different sizes and shapes. However, the basic function of the parts are similar. They all have the same basic parts with the similar function. Now this brings us to the end of Unit 1, Session 2, and we've learned about the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells and the differences between them, and also discussed the bacterial cell being a typical example of prokaryotic cell structure, whilst the plant and animal cells were used as the representative example of the eukaryotic cell. Then we ended with the distinction between unicellular and multicellular organisms. Hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you for your attention.